Alright guys, in today's video, got an oldie but a goodie here. I've got this HP MediaSmart Server, and the problem with this guy is he has no start. When we try to put the power on, nothing happens. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through diagnosing that, and it's probably going to end up being a power supply replacement, and don't see any videos on these, so I thought maybe it'd be worthwhile bringing you along for the ride while I do this. All right, the first thing on diagnosing a problem like this is to make sure that you're actually getting voltage. You can try a separate power cable, and if you still don't have any luck, you can come in here and try to see if you're actually getting AC voltage. And we can see here on the meter that we are getting 125 volts, which says that we got power. So the problem is inside the unit. So let's go ahead and start disassembling it. So to disassemble this particular HP model, first thing we're going to do is open up the cover here in the front, and then we're going to unlock the drive bay, remove the 4 drives, and then we're going to remove this cover plate. So you can unlock the drives with a screwdriver or a coin. Just get this into the unlocked position, and then you'll be able to push in these little buttons here and release the latches. Right, so they just kind of go down and you lift up, go down, lift up. I don't know if you can see that one. I'll do this one again. Go down and lift up. And then when you do that, you'll be able to pull the drives out. So I'd recommend you go ahead and mark them as you pull them out, so you'll be able to identify what bay they went in when you reassemble it later. All right, with the drives out, we're going to want to remove this front cover here. It's held in place by a couple of Phillips screws. Take a small jeweler type of Phillips. We're going to remove these two. This one right up here on top. And then there's another one right down here in the lower corner. So very, very, very small screws. With those removed, this guy comes off, and you can just set him aside. You don't need to disconnect anything. Now, when you have that off, you're going to see that inside there, you've got a couple of screws. You got one over on this side right here that we're going to remove. And then we've got another one that's inside right here. We're going to take that guy out as well. Okay, so those two are out. Now with those two screws out, in order to slide this forward to access this power supply and disconnect it, we're going to have to get this backplane out. So if you look above this, see right back in here, you have a backplane. And this is where the drives plug in. This has to come up. And so in order to remove that, we actually have to get the cover off. All right, so yeah, what I was saying before is we want to get this top lid off. And the way that top lid is going to come off, if we turn this guy around, upside down for a moment just so you guys can see it. A little piece of our drive cable caddy came off that we didn't notice. We're going to kind of zoom in here, and we're going to take a look at this little latch. All right, so this guy right here is just going to slide forward in this little slot. And then on the front here, these guys here kind of lock in, these little tabs. And what we're going to do is we're going to lift up, and we're going to push from the back. And that's going to get this to slide up and out. All right, so we're going to lift up and we're going to push from the back. We're going to lift up on that little tab in the slot, slide it forward and up, and that takes this cover off. Now with that cover off, move our camera a little closer here. Now we can see there's these little two blue retainers in the back. What we want to do on these is we want to rotate them down, and that'll give us the ability to lift that backplane out. Now we're going to need some slack on this, so we're going to go ahead and remove this connector here, set him aside, this connector here, and this connector here, right? And these just all set aside. So now this backplane can come up. Now to give you some feel for what it is, how it moves, when you look at it from this point of view, you can see there's air passages that are cut into this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to stick our finger in here and we're going to lift up on the printed circuit board while pushing down on the chassis, right? So we're going to push this guy on the table, we're going to lift him down, and we're going to pop him up. And now we have this guy where he can come out, right? So now that's off. And with that off, now we can slide this bottom piece out that we removed earlier. So again, if we move the camera back, change our point of view, now this guy comes out, which is our motherboard power supply assembly. All right, we've got that removed from the chassis now. Now with this guy out of the way, we can go ahead and disconnect the proprietary power cable. And it may be fused in there pretty good. Yeah, I might have to get a little tool to help me grab this. Hold on a second. All right, let's continue with this. So we were trying to get this unplugged. We're going to give ourselves some slack first by taking off this small zip tie right here. And now with that off out of the way, what I'm going to do to help me get this connector out, just got a pair of PH200s. These are plastic jawed pliers, and they are good for doing work where you don't want to damage anything like this. Stuff is wedged in like that. All right, so we got that off of there. Now our power supply is held on by a few screws on this frame to do here to get this off, were these screws on the back. Ouch. Didn't need to remove those other ones. We got one here. Got another screw here. And we got one right over here. And with those out, we should be able to push this guy through like that. Flip it around where you guys can see. This just slides out. And there's our old power supply, which is original HP Delta Electronics. Looks like a GPS 200AB space C Rev F. Regardless, it's not made anymore. 200 watts, so we'll definitely replace it with something that's a lot better. But let's first see if this one is really bad. All right, guys, let's give this a test and make sure that this is the problem. So when we look at this particular kind of power supply, you can see it's just a single cable coming out There's all of the accessory power, everything is in this one. It's not a direct SFX standard connector. It's a proprietary one from Hewlett-Packard, although it is the same type of connector. And if we take a look at it a little closer, what you can find is on the side opposite the latch. This is going to be pin 1. This is going to be pin 2, right? So you can start numbering in that direction. And pin 1 and 2, it turns out, you can jumper to simulate the power on signal. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and hook up power to this guy. Just going to use a glove here when we don't know the state of a power supply. It may be shorted. And then we're going to take pins 1 and 2 and we're going to short them out. And what that should do is do the same thing as powering it on. Now we already know this doesn't work, but we can see what does work, if anything, on it. All right, so with that guy jumpered, now we can go and test some of these powers. So the third pin over, so that's 1 and 2. Third pin over is going to be ground. So if we hold our test clip there and we set our meter on volts, pull this back a little bit so you guys can see what's on the meter. All right, I'm going to go down these pins. So the first one I'm going to check, I got ground on pin 3, and now I'm going to check, excuse me, I'm going to put ground on pin 5. 3, 4, 5. Pin 5. And now I'm going to check right next to pin 5. We should have plus 5 volts on pin 6. We got 5 volts on pin 6. We should also have 5 volts on pins 3 and 4. We do not have any on 3, and we don't have it on 4, but we do have it on 6. So right there is part of our problem. You know, we could keep going. Let's see, pin 10 should have 3 volts. Nothing. So yes, we have a dead power supply, right? Pin 11 should have 12 volts, and we've got nothing. But we still have our 5 volts on pin 6. So either we haven't successfully powered it on and we're just getting standby power, or she's shot. Let's go ahead and presume she's shot and replace it. What we're going to replace this with, you can get these, I'll put a link in the description. Get these kits, and basically it's a aftermarket replacement supply. Same size, same orientation. 350 watts. It's going to mount up exactly the same. Now the fact is that this connector is proprietary. This connector is going to be standard, and so they also include for these HPs an adapter. And this adapter then will allow the correct crossover between standard to HP proprietary. So we'll get that on there first. And this is going to be a lot of extra cabling inside of our casing. All right, so now we got that on. Now we're going to hook this up to our motherboard chassis. All right, so we're going to slide this guy in just like it came out. Go ahead and install those screws that we removed previously. There's 1. Here's 2. And here's 3. And then we're going to slide it back into the case. And then we'll show how we get it routed around in terms of the cabling. All right, we slide our plug-in side first. Now before we put it all the way, we're going to want to put our connector on. Make sure it clicks. Now before we had a zip tie holding all this together right on top here. Move this camera a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put that same kind of zip tie there just to keep all these wires away from the heat sink, as well as to keep them bundled down so we can slide this in easier. All right. Grab all these guys. Run them through here. Actually, we'll run them this way. All right, now we'll slide this guy the rest of the way in. Fold this under there. It's a really tight fit with this adapter cable. Now, years ago, you could get these custom made for this proprietary connector, but this is a really old unit, so we're lucky we even got anything. I almost forgot we've got a couple of screws that go in here to mount this guy on. Let's do those first, because those will actually help us hold this. There's the one on the left side. Get him nice and seated all the way. And we'll do the one on the back side over here. I have to block your view for a moment on this one. Run all this out of the way so we can see and get this in there first. Gosh, guys, can't even put a screw in today. There we go, finally. This orientation so you can see how to get the cable adapter and the cable from the power supply to fit into the limited space that was originally there. You used to be able to get these power supplies pre-wired for this proprietary kind of HP connector, but it's so old now, we're lucky that somebody even makes an adapter. All right, so we're going to push the cable connector for the adapter and the original cable in first so that we can get the clearance we need to put the cover on. And then we're going to put in this little braided wiring cover that covers the primary cables, right? And that'll sit like that. And that'll give us enough clearance to get the cover on. Like that. And we'll be able to put our 2 small screws back in. Get our holes lined up. You're going to have a lot of tension on it because of how this is, at least until it settles in. Trying to find what I did with our teeny tiny screwdriver. There it is. All right. Oops. Actually, I didn't realize this was magnetic, so I can probably just go ahead and get it into position first. Here's just an upside down view, guys. Trying to get the last of these front case screws in. I thought this might give you better visibility and a little bit more light. But once you get these 2 guys snugged in, they'll hold our cables in place. With that front cover in, now we can reinstall this backplane. Pull these cables up out of the way. It sits along a couple of metal retainers inside here. Here and here. So you want to make sure you rest it inside of those, and you want to be careful that you don't damage any of these capacitors that are mounted to it. Remember that it faces with the connectors to the drives facing the forward of the unit. So just to kind of show you again, right? So these openings here and here on both sides fit into those metal pieces that I was just showing you. So I don't know if I'll be able to get a great view here, but I'll slide this down. Okay, and then we'll get it on those little metal pieces. Then we'll come in and we'll reach our hand in. Oops, got to put it back on there. It popped off. And then we'll push it down into the motherboard. And if for some reason it's not going, it's probably because you don't have it lined up properly. So I'm double checking here myself. There we go. And once that guy's snapped back in, then you can reconnect your connectors. And then turn your retainers back in place. And now we're ready to put the top cover back on. These little hooked ends here and here, here and here are going to fit into the similar kind of slots here, 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 and here. And then this notch in the middle is where this guy's going to go. So just get them lined up on the side, like you see here. Close it into place and push it back. Make sure that it has settled all the way to the back. And then you're ready to put the drives back in. All right, now you can put your drives back in. Push and lock. Number 3. Push and lock. Number 2. Push and lock. And then on number 1, we put that little piece of plastic that had popped off here. If yours pops off here, it's very easy to get back on. You can see it settles in here and here with the pins, and then fits under these two plastic tabs on each side. Push that down there. Take your screwdriver and relock it. Okay. Maybe we didn't lock it all the way. Something's not sitting in here right. This guy. There he goes. All right, he didn't fit in there all the way. Now we can close it. All right, folks, let's find out if our work was all for naught or not, right? So we're going to take a Ethernet cable, and we're going to hook that up to the Ethernet jack, because remember, this particular type of machine is headless, and we don't want to just shut it off when we get it into working state, so we need a way to remote log into it. So now we're going to plug the power connector in. All right, she's automatically firing up. She started off flashing red. That had me worried for a second, but now she's flashing aqua, so that's good. Network flashed on and off was a reset. So she's still flashing aqua, so that's good. She should be powering up. What we're looking to have happen here is these lights on the drive to come on and indicate that whatever took out the power supply, or when the power supply failed, if it failed of its own failure, that it didn't cause any other damage. Just going to have to give it a moment here. This is old 2008, 2009 type technology, so it's going to take it a little bit to finish. I can tell that the power supply replacement fan is louder than our original Hewlett-Packard one, unfortunately, but not obtrusively loud. I don't know if you guys can hear that in the background. But she's definitely louder than before. All right, so I presume what's happening here is that check disk is running on the drives that were improperly shut down and trying to do a repair. We'll give it a couple more moments here. If it looks like it's going to take too long, rather than you guys just looking at dead air here, I might pause the video, let it do its thing, and come back when it's done. But I'd prefer you see it recover live here. So we'll try to give it a couple more moments. All right, so I noticed it stopped flashing, and boom, there we are. We are in business. So now what I can do is I can remote log in, verify that everything is good to go on this unit and that we didn't suffer any casualties, and it's back in service. So I hope this video helped you out for how to determine that you have a failure like this and how to disassemble and replace the power supply in any model of the Hewlett-Packard MediaSmart servers. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. I'll try to help. If you found this video useful, it got your machine back in operation, or you just found it interesting, hit that like button. We'd really appreciate it. Otherwise, thanks for watching.